17-year-old Leon Carter had spent 3 years homeless on the city streets, learning one unbreakable rule: never get involved. But one rainy night, crouched behind a dumpster in an alley, he saw something that made him break that rule. Two men in sharp suits, their expressions hard and calculated, were tampering with a police radio. They were uploading something, a file that had the potential to bring down every law enforcement officer in the city. As Leon watched, a uniformed officer appeared, oblivious to the danger ahead. Officer Mia Grant, young and confident, entered the alley, unaware of the deadly situation unfolding around her. Without a second thought, Leon broke his own rule. He leapt out from his hiding spot, grabbed Mia, and covered her mouth with one hand, whispering urgently, "Don't talk." The words he spoke were not just a warning. They were the key to exposing a massive conspiracy, one that reached far beyond the streets he knew. The rain fell relentlessly that night, turning the streets into a dark, reflective mirror. Neon signs blinked faintly through the downpour as pedestrians rushed past, umbrellas held high. Leon knew this area well, the alleyways where he found shelter and food. His stomach growled in protest, empty for 2 days, but the Chinese restaurant nearby often tossed out leftovers around this time. If he waited, he'd get his meal. He had learned the art of waiting on the streets. Patience was often his only ally. Leon pulled his thin jacket tighter against his body, though it did little to shield him from the biting cold. 3 years on the streets had taught him that comfort was a luxury he could no longer afford. He had to stay alert, always ready. As the rain drummed above, he heard footsteps coming from the street. 2 men walked into the alley, their silhouettes faint in the dim light. Leon pressed his back against the wall, blending into the shadows. This was his territory, a place he knew like the back of his hand. Every crack, every rusted fire escape, every spot to hide, was ingrained in his memory. But something about these 2 men felt off. They were too clean, too precise. Leon recognized the movements of people who dealt in illegal goods, drugs, weapons, stolen items. But these men were different. Their shoes clicked against the wet pavement with a military-like rhythm. They stopped a few feet away from Leon, standing beneath a flickering streetlight, its light flashing every few seconds. In those brief moments of light, he caught sight of their faces. Both men were white, in their mid-30s. The taller one had a scar across his left eyebrow, while the shorter one wore glasses that reflected the light. "You have it?" the tall man asked, his voice tinged with an accent Leon couldn't place. The shorter man nodded, reaching into his coat and pulling out something small. Leon's heart skipped a beat as he recognized what it was, a flash drive, but unlike any he had ever seen. It had a digital display, with numbers scrolling across the surface. "This will give us access to everything," the tall man said. "Every patrol route, every officer's schedule, every radio frequency. The encryption took months to crack, but it's all here." Leon's blood ran cold. These men weren't just criminals. They were something much worse. One of them pulled out a police radio, and Leon's gut tightened. Why did they have police equipment? The taller man examined the radio, and then the shorter man inserted the flash drive into a hidden slot in the device. For a brief moment, the radio's display lit up with strange symbols before returning to normal. Leon's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The taller man turned to the shorter one. "How long until it uploads?" he asked. "It's already done," the shorter man replied. "Every radio on this frequency is compromised. We'll hear everything they hear, know everything they know. No one will know we're listening." Just as Leon began to process what he had witnessed, the sound of footsteps echoed from the street into the alley. Both men tensed, their hands instinctively moving toward their waistbands, where Leon knew weapons were hidden. A figure emerged from the rain, a police officer making her rounds. Officer Mia Grant walked with confidence, her hand resting lightly on her sidearm as she surveyed the alley. "Evening, gentlemen," Mia called out, her voice carrying authority despite her small frame. "Everything all right here?" The 2 men exchanged a quick glance, and the tall one smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just getting out of the rain, officer," he said, his voice smooth. "My friend here was showing me a shortcut to the subway." Mia stepped closer, her eyes narrowing slightly. She'd been on the force long enough to know when something felt off. "The subway's 3 blocks that way," she said, pointing back toward the street. This alley's a dead end, isn't it? The shorter man's demeanor shifted in an instant. Where before he had seemed nervous, now he moved with unsettling precision, his posture turning predatory. How embarrassing, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We must have gotten turned around. Happens to everyone in weather like this. Mia's hand shifted slightly, her fingers now resting closer to her weapon. Why don't you gentlemen head back to the street, she suggested. I'll point you in the right direction. The tall man moved slightly, positioning himself subtly to Mia's left. Leon recognized the maneuver instantly. They were trying to flank her. His heart raced as he realized what was about to happen. These men couldn't let her go. Not after what she had seen. They would have to silence her. Leon watched as the man with glasses reached slowly into his coat, his fingers brushing against something metallic. A knife, maybe, or a silenced pistol. Either way, Mia had only seconds to react. Leon's mind raced. He should stay hidden. Getting involved would only put him in danger. These men were professionals, dangerous in ways street thugs weren't. And Mia was a cop, the same system that had failed him, the system that had let his mother disappear without a trace. Why should he care what happened to her? But then he saw something in Mia's posture, the way she stood, the way she held herself. She wasn't like the other cops who had harassed him for sleeping in doorways or chased him from warm buildings. There was something different about her, something that reminded him of his mother. That same desire to help, to protect. Without thinking, Leon burst from his hiding place, his sneakers slapping against the wet pavement. The two men turned toward the noise, momentarily distracted. "Officer, watch out," Leon shouted, but his voice was caught in his throat. Instead, he crashed into Mia from the side, his hand clamping over her mouth as they tumbled toward the wall. Mia's training kicked in immediately. Her elbow drove back into his ribs, and her free hand moved toward her weapon. "Don't talk," Leon whispered urgently, his voice barely audible. "Just listen, please." Mia's body went rigid, her training telling her to fight him off, to arrest him. But something in his voice made her pause. Her eyes locked onto his, and she saw the fear there. This wasn't an attack. This was a warning. The two men recovered quickly from their surprise and began moving toward them, the tall man's hand already inside his jacket. The other man had pulled out a tactical knife, its blade gleaming in the flickering light. "Let her go, kid," the tall man said, his accent thickening. "This doesn't concern you." Leon kept his grip on Mia, pulling her back into the shadows. "Your radio," he whispered so quietly she almost didn't hear him. "They did something to your radio." Mia instinctively reached for the device on her belt. It clicked, faint, almost rhythmic, like static, but deliberate. Her body froze, and in that instant, she understood. These men weren't just criminals. They were something worse. And this homeless kid had just saved her life. "Smart boy," the man with glasses said, stepping forward. But his smile was gone. "Officer Grant, we really need you to come with us." Mia's blood went cold. Quietly, they knew her name. She whispered to Leon, her voice tight with urgency, "Run. When I move, you run." But Leon didn't let go. Instead, he pulled her further into the shadows, guiding her toward a narrow gap between the buildings. "Trust me," he whispered, his voice steady. "I know these alleys better than anyone." The clicking sound from the radio grew louder, and soon more sounds joined it. Voices, distant at first, but getting closer. The two men smiled, unfazed. "Backup's coming," the tall one said. "But not the kind you're hoping for, Officer Grant." Mia realized then that she couldn't trust anyone. Whoever was coming wasn't there to help her. The radio wasn't just compromised. It was being used to coordinate something much bigger. Something involving cops who weren't really cops. She made her decision. "Get evidence," she whispered to Leon, her grip tightening on her weapon. "Then figure out who we can trust." As they moved through the alleyways, the rain subsiding, Mia's mind raced. Leon had risked everything to save her, and she wasn't about to let that be in vain. The night was far from over, and the conspirators had no idea what was coming for them. But at least she wasn't alone anymore. Mia and Leon moved swiftly through the wet, narrow streets, trying to remain unnoticed. Every shadow seemed like a potential threat, every footstep an alarm. Leon had led the way with a natural ease that surprised Mia, his instincts sharper than any police training she had seen. She had to admit, she was beginning to trust him, despite everything. They reached a safe spot, a dimly lit, abandoned subway entrance, where they could catch their breath. Mia's radio clicked into silence, the usual static now eerily absent. "Everything's gone quiet," Mia murmured, her eyes scanning the empty street. Too quiet. Leon, however, didn't share her sense of unease. He was already focused on something else, his phone, typing quickly as he sent a message. "Who are you sending this to?" Mia asked, her voice low. "Someone who knows how to handle things better than we can," Leon said without looking up, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. "I trust them." "Who?" Mia pressed. She knew better than to just follow anyone blindly, but Leon's determination had sparked something in her. She couldn't ignore it. "My mom used to work with people who dealt with stuff like this," Leon replied, his voice tight. Before she disappeared, Mia's heart clenched at the mention of his mother. She could sense the weight of the loss in Leon's voice. "She was a nurse, right?" Mia asked gently, her eyes flicking to Leon. "Yeah," Leon said, looking up briefly. "She was. And she knew things. Real things. She kept files on people who did bad things. But someone got to her before she could expose them." Mia's thoughts raced. A nurse, investigating corruption in the system. It sounded too familiar. She had met plenty of good cops who had been silenced for doing the right thing. But to hear this from a teenager who had survived on the streets made it all the more real. "Do you think all of this, it's connected to what she was investigating?" Mia asked, her voice almost a whisper. Leon nodded. "I think my mom knew too much. She started asking the wrong questions at the clinic where she worked. Then she disappeared." He paused, his eyes hardened with the kind of anger only someone who had lost everything could understand. "I wasn't going to sit back and let that happen to anyone else." Mia had no words. For the first time, she understood the depth of Leon's commitment. He wasn't just a homeless kid trying to survive. He was trying to do what his mother had been trying to do, expose a system that was rotting from the inside out. They spent the next few hours laying low, trying to keep off the radar while Mia's thoughts raced. As much as she wanted to go after the men in the alley, to gather evidence, there was a bigger picture to consider. This wasn't just a simple drug deal or a corrupt cop. It was something far more dangerous. Leon had mentioned a network, and Mia had seen the kind of power such networks could wield. If this was as big as it seemed, they couldn't take it down by themselves. The next morning, they met up with Detective Maria Rivera from Internal Affairs. Maria had been one of the few cops Mia could trust after everything that had happened. As they sat in the back of a nondescript car, Mia went over the events of the previous night. Leon sat quietly, occasionally glancing at his phone. "Anything new?" Maria asked, eyeing the tense atmosphere between Mia and Leon. Leon nodded. "I've been in contact with someone who can help," he said, his voice steady. "They have the resources to handle this." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Who exactly are you trusting, Leon?" "Someone who's been following my mom's work. They know more about what's going on than anyone." Mia exchanged a glance with Maria. "Is he ready for this?" "He's just a kid." "He's not just a kid," Maria said, her voice low and serious. "I've never met anyone who's survived like him. And his mother, she was onto something big. We can't afford to ignore that." Maria pulled out a secure file from under her seat, flipping it open to show Mia and Leon. "This came in last night. Copies of the surveillance footage from the alley where you two met. We've got proof. These guys are part of a much bigger operation. And it's not just about drugs and guns. This is about power. They've been using the system to cover their tracks for years." Leon leaned forward, staring at the photos of the men they had encountered in the alley. His eyes locked onto the scarred man from the warehouse. "That's the guy who tried to kill us." Maria nodded. "He's more than just a thug. He's got ties to international criminal organizations, smuggling, trafficking, the works." Mia clenched her fists. She couldn't help but think of all the victims, the children who had disappeared without a trace. And now, with everything in front of them, they had to make a choice: expose the conspiracy or risk losing everything. "Whatever we do, we have to move fast," Mia said, her voice determined. "They're already covering their tracks. We can't let this slide any longer." Leon nodded, his face hardening with resolve. "My mother fought for this. I won't let her work go to waste." He turned to Mia, his eyes locking onto hers. "We have to stop them." Maria looked between them, her expression unreadable. "We do this my way. We have the evidence. Now, we need to take down the whole network." The three of them spent the next several hours planning, carefully organizing their next move. They knew that they couldn't take on this fight alone. They needed allies, people who still believed in justice, people who would stand with them. And they couldn't afford to wait any longer. The conspiracy was closing in, and they had to strike first. As night fell, they made their way to the warehouse district once more, the same place where it had all started. Leon's phone buzzed. "It's them," he said, his voice steady. "They're moving. We need to act now." Mia and Maria shared a quick glance. "Let's go," Mia said. "We're not backing down." Under the cover of darkness, they made their way through the back alleys, carefully avoiding any patrols. Leon, surprisingly adept at navigating the maze of industrial buildings, led the way. The city's lights were distant, barely visible through the haze of fog and rain. As they approached the warehouse, Leon stopped suddenly, signaling for them to stay low. "They're here," Leon whispered, his eyes scanning the perimeter. "But there's something off. I think they're waiting for us." Mia frowned. "You're sure?" "Yeah," Leon said, his voice tight. "I know these places. They've been preparing for this." Maria motioned for them to follow her. "Stay close. If they're waiting, we're walking into a trap. But we have no choice. We can't let them destroy the evidence." They circled the warehouse, moving silently through the rain-soaked streets until they reached a fire escape. Leon was the first to climb, moving with the ease of someone who had spent far too many nights hiding from danger. Mia followed, her heart pounding in her chest, while Maria brought up the rear, her hand always near her weapon. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, with the faint sound of voices echoing through the concrete walls. They moved carefully, staying hidden in the shadows. From above, they could see men unloading equipment, setting up cameras, and talking in hushed voices. Mia's stomach churned. "They're setting up for something big," she whispered. "They're not just setting up cameras," Leon said, his voice barely audible. "They're monitoring everything, and they know exactly when we're coming." "Then we move fast," Maria said, her voice hardening. "We get the evidence and get out. No more mistakes." As they moved deeper into the warehouse, Leon's phone buzzed again. He checked the screen, his face tightening. "They've got a kill switch," he said urgently. "They're planning to wipe the servers clean. We need to stop them now." The clock was ticking. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. This was their last chance to expose the truth, and they weren't going to let it slip away. They approached the main control room, the heart of the operation. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, Mia could see several men seated at a table, watching monitors. The tall man with the scar, the same one who had been in the alley, was among them. His eyes were fixed on the screen, his expression cold and calculating. "We need to act now," Maria whispered. "We can't let them get away with this." Leon nodded, his expression hard. "I'm going in first. I know how to move unnoticed. You two follow my lead." As they prepared to move, Mia felt the weight of the situation bearing down on her. They were close, so close to ending this, to taking down the entire network. But the fear, the doubt, still lingered. Would they succeed? Or would they become the next victims? With a deep breath, Mia tightened her grip on her weapon. "We're doing this," she said firmly. Together, they moved toward the door. The fight for justice, for truth, was just beginning. And they wouldn't stop until they brought the corrupt system to its knees. Mia, Leon, and Maria crept through the narrow hallway, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the relentless rain outside. The door to the control room loomed ahead, the low hum of equipment on the other side a reminder of the stakes. The tall man with the scar was sitting at the control desk, his attention fixed on the screens. He didn't notice them approach. Leon moved first, gliding silently into the room, followed closely by Maria, and finally, Mia. The men seated at the table were focused, their eyes flicking from one monitor to the next. Leon motioned for Maria to take the far end of the room, while he and Mia positioned themselves closer to the tall man with the scar. The air in the room felt charged, as if they were standing on the edge of something far bigger than just the men in front of them. "You're too late," the tall man said, his voice low, almost a growl, as if he could sense their presence before they even spoke. He didn't look up from his screen. "This operation was never about you." Mia tensed, her fingers itching to grab her weapon. But before she could make a move, Leon's voice cut through the tension. "I don't think you understand," he said calmly, stepping into the light. "This is about us now, and it's time to put an end to it." The tall man turned slowly, his eyes narrowing as he recognized Leon. "The Washington kid," he muttered under his breath. A twisted smile crept onto his face. "I was wondering when you'd show up. You've been a thorn in our side for a long time." Maria, who had positioned herself behind the other men, raised her weapon and stepped into view. "It's over," she said coldly. "You're done." The tall man's expression hardened, his hand moving toward his jacket, but before he could draw a weapon, the rest of the men in the room stood up, their eyes filled with determination. "Get them," one of them shouted. Mia's heart pounded in her chest as chaos erupted. The men lunged toward them, weapons drawn. The tall man moved with surprising speed, and the fight was on. Mia ducked as a gunshot rang out, narrowly avoiding the bullet that struck the wall next to her. She fired back, taking down one of the men, while Leon tackled another to the ground, using his street-honed instincts to disarm him. Maria was moving with precision, her shots calculated and deliberate, taking out one man after another. But despite their efforts, more men poured into the room from hidden doors, surrounding them. The odds were stacked against them, and Mia could feel the weight of it pressing down. But Leon wasn't backing down. His face was set with determination, his eyes fierce. He grabbed a pipe from the corner of the room and swung it at one of the men, knocking him to the ground. "We're not going down without a fight," he shouted. Mia ducked behind a control panel, reloading her gun. "We need to shut this down," she yelled. "The servers, Leon, take them out." Leon nodded, his face focused. He sprinted across the room, ducking under gunfire as he reached the central server rack. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a tool his mother had left for him, a remnant of her work. With expert precision, he plugged it into the server, and within seconds, the system began to shut down. The monitors flickered and went dark. "We've got to get out of here," Maria shouted, firing one last shot at the men closing in on them. Now, as the room descended into chaos, Mia grabbed Leon by the arm, pulling him toward the exit. They had to move fast. Everything was falling apart, and they needed to escape before the reinforcements arrived. But as they ran, Mia couldn't help but feel the weight of what they had just done. This wasn't just a win for them. It was the first step toward exposing everything. They had stopped the operation, but the fight was far from over. They raced through the warehouse, the sounds of their footsteps echoing in the hallways as alarms blared in the background. Leon, despite the pain from his shoulder, was moving faster than Mia could have imagined. His determination to finish what his mother had started pushed him forward. "Are we sure this is the way out?" Mia asked, her voice tight with worry as they turned another corner. The sound of footsteps and shouting voices grew louder behind them. "Yes," Leon replied, his face set in a grim expression. "I know this place. There's a hidden exit near the back. We're almost there." Mia glanced over her shoulder. Maria was bringing up the rear, her gun raised as she kept an eye on their pursuers. "Keep moving," she called out. "We don't have much time." As they neared the back of the warehouse, Leon pushed open a hidden door, revealing a narrow alleyway leading to a loading dock. The rain had slowed, but the cold air still bit at their skin as they hurried toward the street. Leon glanced down the alley, then at Mia. "This is it. We're free." But just as they stepped into the open, a black van pulled up, its engine roaring to life. Mia's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the vehicle from earlier, the same one they had seen during the initial confrontation. "Get in," Maria shouted, waving them toward the van. Without hesitation, they scrambled inside, the door slamming shut behind them. The driver, a man with a hardened face, didn't speak as he floored the gas pedal, speeding down the rain-slicked streets. Mia glanced at Leon, who was still catching his breath. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. "To the FBI," Leon said quietly. "We've got the evidence. Now we need to make sure it gets into the right hands." As they drove through the city, Mia thought about everything they had uncovered, everything they had fought for. The conspiracy was larger than she had ever imagined. And now, they had the power to bring it all down. By the time they reached the FBI field office, Mia was exhausted, her body sore from the fight. But there was no time to rest. They rushed inside, where agents were already waiting for them. Maria handed over the flash drive containing the full extent of the operation, and Leon passed over his mother's notebook, the pages filled with the damning evidence they had gathered over the years. "This is it," Maria said, her voice unwavering. "Everything we need to take them down." The agents took the materials, nodding solemnly. We'll handle the rest, one of them said. You've done more than enough. This will go to the highest levels. The whole operation will be dismantled. Mia stood there, feeling the weight of it all. This was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another. They had exposed the conspiracy, stopped the operation, and saved countless lives. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Thank you, Leon said quietly, looking at Mia. For believing in me. For listening. Mia smiled, her heart swelling with pride. No. Thank you, she replied. You saved us all. As the agents began to make their plans, Mia looked at Leon, the young man who had been through so much and still fought for what was right. He wasn't just a survivor of the streets anymore. He was a hero. And this was only the beginning of his story.